Welcome to the Fit for Halter podcast, where we bring practical content and community to the amateur halter exhibitor by interviewing industry experts, legends, and the people shaping the future of our sport. So today I have a very special guest, someone who truly embodies excellence in the halter industry. Our guest is not only a respected judge, but a legend in the field with years of experience evaluating and shaping the standards of halter competition. Clint Fullerton was our fourth guest here on the Fit for Halter podcast. So if you want to learn more about his history, please check out episode number 4. So in the halter world, success isn't about just having a great horse. It's about preparation, practice, and attention to every detail. From fitting to presentation to mastering the art of showing your horse, every top competitor knows the real work happens long before stepping into the pen. So Clint Fullerton has seen it all, and today he's here to share invaluable insights on what it takes to stand out in the ring and earn that title. So thank you, Clint. We welcome you here to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump right in and start with just some general industry insight from you. What are some of the biggest changes that you've seen in the industry over the years?
Some of the biggest changes I've seen in the halter industry over the years in the show is that it's a shrinking market. The loss of the state halter futurities, and now our industry is still well represented, but it's just on a national level. For like the Breeders' Halter Futurity, the WCHA, the World Shows, and the Congress is where you get your biggest bang for your buck, I guess you could say. I wish the futurities, the state futurities, and the smaller futurities were still around, but I've seen a shrinkage in those.
So from your perspective, what separates a great competitor from a good one in a halter pen?
The eye for detail, and somebody who is just consistent, and they know their horse. They know how to set that horse up to present it to the best of its ability. Conformation does change in a setup. You can have a horse that is really, really good backed, but if you stretch that horse out in your setup, you can drop the back. You can, if you have it set up too tight, you can cause the hocks to look bad or the croup to look steep. If you have their head too high or they're too low, somebody who is a student of the conformation and how to present that horse and how to be consistent is going to be the one, and that does their job and shows up with a horse that's very fit and very broke, or it's going to be the successful person. It's not just about having the best horse. You could have the best horse that's unfit and poorly presented or not broke, and that horse is not going to be successful. And you can have a horse that is a lesser horse, but is perfectly presented, perfectly fit, shown beautifully, and that conformation that day is going to come to the top.
Yeah. Okay. So you've touched on preparation a few times. How crucial is that when it comes to a person's success? And maybe some examples of preparation in your mind.
It's very crucial. The fitness of that horse and the presentation of that horse, the grooming of that horse. Halter is the one discipline that every single detail matters, from the mane to the clipping to the hair coat to how it's presented, how the halters fit on it, fit correctly to the horse. All of those are crucial, because a poorly fit halter can make the horse look bad-headed when he's not bad-headed. A perfectly fit halter can make a horse that's a little plainer in their face look better. How you clip those horses, how you do everything. It is a discipline of detail.
So in a very general or quick sense, maybe the 50-cent version, because I know this is a broad topic as well, but what does your fitting program look like if you were to bring in a client horse or perhaps fit a horse of your own? What's kind of the flyover view of your program?
The programs are much, my program especially, but I think all the top people, the programs are more simple than you think. The thing that separates those programs is the consistency and the daily work. Not skipping the daily work, but day in, day out. Those horses are worked consistently. Those horses are groomed consistently. They're fed the quality of feed. They're looked at with a critical eye. But I off subject, but with the subject, how they're presented and how they're broke. I was reading a Facebook post and an amateur halter person was saying, I work a job and I have to fit my horses at night and I'm trying to get them broke. How do you guys get them broke to set up? And a trainer commented it takes hours and hours and hours of work. And I very rarely will comment on will write a comment on a Facebook post. That's not what I like to do. But I was so disappointed in that trainer because it really doesn't take hours and hours of work. It just takes daily work, a few setups a day to achieve it. I will tell you on my setting those horses up, I am a huge person on the horse being broke. I don't pick up feet on my horses. They're broke to set up off the chain and off their wither for their front feet. So I just don't pick up feet. My horses, if I ever tried to pick up a foot, would be like, what's going on? I mean, they would be freaked out. So, but that level of brokenness that I've achieved in those horses is really done in less than 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes tops. I'll set those horses up 3 or 4 times a day. When I start out, just ask them to learn to move their feet, ask for a back foot and move the foot. And then once I can achieve that, then I'll start working on their front feet. And then once I've achieved that over a period of a few days or whatever, then I, move it an inch, move it 2 inches, lift your neck, do this. The amateur person can achieve this. It can be done, and it does not take hours and hours. It just takes that 15 minutes a day in that department to get them that broke.
That's good. So then, kind of in the same line of thinking, how do you balance the conditioning, the feed program, and grooming, not only in the midst of a busy schedule, but when you're also trying to bring on peak performance or peak fitness in your horse for a certain horse show?
The peak performance or the peak fitness in a horse show is the adjustment of your work programs. That's where you achieve that. A horse cannot stay in peak performance year round. So for me, in the spring, the winter, the spring, and the summer, those horses are not as heavy. I keep them a little thinner. And then we up the feed for the fall majors and the futurities, and we start feeding a little bit more. My horses on the exercise program, the younger horses can go lower. Not many horses rarely go over 15 minutes on working. So the 15 minutes a day is that, but sometimes it's more feed, sometimes it's less feed, sometimes it's more intense work. Sometimes it's back off and let them just trot and let them jog. You have to know your horse and you have to be looking at that horse. I think the amateur, the biggest mistake I see them making is they go to work, they come home, they've got to get the horse worked, they got to get the horse brushed, so they're going through the routine and they're going through the steps and they're making sure they get that in. But when they're working that horse, when you're working him, are you looking at him? Not just a routine. I've got 15 minutes, I got to get him worked. And I've got another 20 minutes and I got to get him brushed. And when I'm working my horses, I'm studying them and I'm saying, is this horse too light? Do I need to put weight on him? Is this horse too heavy? Do I need to pull weight off? Is he looking great? Does he feel great today? Does he need to work harder? Do I need to back off and just let him jog today? What is he looking like? How is that present? How is he presenting himself to me to make it work? So I look at those things daily. Don't get stuck in the routine of I've got to get through this instead of really opening your eye every time you're working with that horse.
That's good. Great wisdom, especially when much of the amateur division is represented by people who work full time. The very person that you mentioned, trying to get the workouts in, trying to get the extra feeding in, the grooming, all of that. Yep.
Exactly. But it's also, I think, trainers. I've seen a
Mm.
lot of
Mhm.
trainers that, are struggling, and it's because they're just going through their day. They're not studying that horse and saying, hey, I need a little bit of here and a little bit of there. It's when you're dealing with a horse every single day, you kind of got to make sure you don't get blind to
Mm.
the changes. Somebody who comes into your barn and saw that horse a month ago will say, oh, wow, that horse has really changed, because it's been a month and they haven't seen it, but you see it every day and you don't see those changes. You have to train yourself to look for it.
Yeah, it's good. We've used pictures in the past,
Yes.
taking a picture, trying to take a picture about the same time every month to see how things have evolved, how the body has evolved, and with a young horse especially, seeing how they're growing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
To fight that barn blindness that
Yes.
you mentioned. Yeah. Yeah. So when you, in reference to practicing, so thinking about practicing the setups and even the workouts, how important is the handler's role in the overall presentation, and what specific items might we focus on when we're practicing?
So I'm gonna go back to routine just a little bit.
Okay.
For me, the practice sessions, the horses that I'm getting trained to set up that aren't completely trained and broke to set up,
Mm-hmm.
5 days a week, those horses are set up uh, before their workouts. So fresh. I don't want them wore down. I don't want them tired. I want them to learn to focus and to set up right out of the stall. So I'll take my 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I'll set those horses up. Then I take them and exercise them. And then I bring, like in the wintertime, I'll bring them in, let them cool off, and then I'll groom them and put them away. In the summertime, I'll set them up uh, and then groom them, or groom them, then set them up, and then work them last, and then rinse them off afterwards. But that setup time happens when those horses are fresh. And I'll ask them to set up 3 or 4 times. Now, once the horses are totally trained, I might ask them to set up once a week, because they do maintain it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
once they know it and they're trained, then I don't think you need to overdo it. But when I say get a horse broke to set up, it's not just placement of their feet. I get them where they put their feet where I want them to, and I can literally move a horse. If my rail person says back that horse's foot up 1/4 of an inch, I can move 1/4 of an inch, and those horses will respond. But it's where to get their head up, to get their head down, to bring their nose out, to bring their nose in. I can guide that horse neck and presentation off of the chain. I can put them anywhere. That's when that horse is truly trained completely.
Mm. We could probably do a whole nother episode on the head and neck position.
The head and neck, you can change the shoulder set, you can change the
Mm.
back, you can change this kind of stuff with how that horse is presented.
Yeah. So then, if you were to pick a couple of skills that you might consider an amateur focusing on or mastering, what couple of skills do you think those would be?
Is learning the conformation,
Mm.
learning
Mm.
learning what great is, and learning what you have. If you have a great horse, good for you. But if you don't, learning how to make that horse look their best. Watch those halter classes, watch the people who are being successful. Watch where that horse's neck is. Look and have somebody help you at home if you can, or at a horse show if you can't. Hey, will you lift my horse's head higher? What does that do for his top line? I'm going to set my horse up tighter. Did that help his hip, or did that lose his hip? Did that lose his back? Be a student of conformation and learn it. I teach all of my customers. I've had a lot of customers over the years. They'll come to me and they don't know halter horses, or they don't know. It's very important to me that they learn it, because I want them to see it. I want them to know what they're showing and what horses, if a horse beats them, that horse should beat you, and here is why. And so that they can learn, and it changes their program and changes how they show their horses, and how they participate, and they're not discouraged because, they're just being told that their horse is better, but it's not, or that you have to be a student of the industry and student of conformation, so where you're at. And it's an ongoing process. I mean, all of us, we learn something every day.
Sure. So you mentioned a 10 to 15 minutes, 5 days a week, practicing, setting up until they're fully broke. How do you see that consistent practice translating into a person's confidence in the ring? Do you think there's a direct correlation there?
It is a direct correlation for the amateur, because then your horse.
Mm-hmm.
You know that horse. You have a feel for that horse. You're confident you can make that presentation happen. That you know that horse, but at the same time, him. If he's not broke, he's not broke. This isn't going to go well. You can't make him set up without picking up his feet, and that if anything happens, he's going to run off if he's not broke. So if you're doing your homework, it's a huge benefit to knowing that horse. If you're not doing your homework, you know what's coming.
I only laugh because I feel like I've been there, where I think, I have not practiced enough before I travel to this horse show, and I get what I deserve here.
And when I started out, my dad was a horse trainer, so I had some advantages and I knew what good horses were, but I didn't necessarily have horses that were the best. So for me to be successful and to build my reputation, my name, if I didn't have the best horse, I had to outshow you, and I had to have it broke better. I had to have every hair in place, because I might not have the horse, but I felt like I was going to have the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to do everything in my power to affect it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Such good wisdom sorry, go ahead.
No, that's how I started building that program. Is I knew I didn't have that expensive horse, so I had to have better broke horses. I had to have better presented horses. I had to have better groomed horses. I had to have their feet, their tails, their halter. I had to have everything else right, because the one thing I was missing might be some of the quality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaks to so many folks in our industry, even in the performance side, where money is a concern, either to purchase the horse, maintain the horse, have it with a trainer, attend a show. There's so many pressures in that area, and yet I think it sounds like, and I have heard others say as well, there is still an opportunity to not only enjoy the show pen, but see some success, especially through your own preparation, if you're trying to kind of fill some gaps in equality. So
absolutely. I know several successful amateurs. I would say I know at least 10 that keep their horses at home, that haul a lot. And I think they do a wonderful job. I actually had one call me one time and said, if I decided to send this mare out for a world show, what do you think? I mean, who would you send her to, or what do you think I could do? And I said, don't send her to anybody. She'll never look that good. Because they did a great job on that horse. They knew her in and out, and they had her fit perfectly. But people on the amateur side who I feel are successful without horse trainers, they don't make excuses. They don't cry politics, and they study everything. And if something doesn't go their way, they decide why, and they look for the why instead of blaming. They're like, I don't have his neck that good today, or that horse was better than mine, or you know what? He was paying attention to the kids running around in the stands and wasn't giving me his neck and doing what he's supposed to do and didn't set up. Or I just didn't get him worked how many days I wanted to get him worked last week. And I understand it. Successful people in all walks of life, the one thing they have in common is they don't blame. They accept responsibility.
Shoo, that's just good all around wisdom. So true. So switching a little bit from perspective of an amateur or somebody who is even a trainer to the judge's side of things. So as a judge, you've mentioned a couple of details that you look for. What are maybe some details or ways that we can prepare our horses that we wouldn't necessarily expect or pay enough attention to?
What do you mean by that?
Are there any areas of the body that you see that are not properly prepared, such as clipping on detail on the legs or the ears or the eyes, maybe the halter preparation? Anything that you see as a common mistake?
The most common mistake I see is poor fitting halters.
Okay.
That's the most common mistake, and horses not broke properly, not trained.
Okay.
I've seen great horses and poor quality horses, all not broke, not the halters hanging off their heads or not fitting properly. And you know, for the amateur audience, there's so many articles on fitting halters. There's so many pictures of horses fitting halters. I know I've done some. I know a lot of my friends have done stuff. This is the one area I do not understand how you cannot get correct on fitting the halter, because there's just so many pictures, so many articles and everything out there to see that where that jaw line is to be framed by that halter. And then I've had people that say, hey, but this is the only halter I have at the moment. Okay, this is what I've got. A friend of mine had a cheaper show halter and it was too big. And she said, this is all I have. I said, you have a hole punch? I will punch holes all the way through the top of that crown of that halter, all the way over. You know, the buckles might be touching on this bridle path, but it's going to be fit up where it's supposed to be. So this is the one area that I struggle with. I'm like, how can you not get this right? I understand feeding. How do you train your eye to look for the crest in the neck? Or how do you train your eye to look for they're too fat by 10 pounds? I understand that education process. That's a process. But fitting on the halter is not a process. This is the one mistake I see amateurs do that just floors me every single time, because this is something that takes no talent.
Can you give us a couple of main points about that halter fit?
So the jaw line of the horse, from the bottom of his jaw on his face to the top of his jaw, that halter is to frame that jaw line. So if the nose band and the underneath portion of the nose band on the halter, if it's hanging an inch below the jaw line, below the jaw line, that halter is too loose. If the ring on the top of the halter, before the buckles come on to the top of the throat latch piece, that's in the middle of his jaw, it's too loose. You have to have it, his jaw is to be framed perfectly by that halter. The noseband sets, and the underneath part of that noseband sets at the bottom of that jawline, and the ring that attaches the buckle sits at the top of that jawline.
Okay, I have a picture in my mind.
Yeah. That jaw is what you frame.
Okay. Do you find that the sizing is something that you go by, or maybe a measurement instead? For example, weanling, yearling, 2-year-old, mare halter. Do those seem to work for people?
I think you have to know your horse. So obviously, you know, a lot of the trainers have 40 show halters, and for me, those halters, I have several different tops. I have shorter tops, longer tops for that halter. I have underneath, longer, shorter. so we can make them fit and build them and change them around and everything else. So, some people just have their one halter, but you can have you buy a weanling size halter, but you have a bigger headed weanling, and it's really a small yearling halter is what that horse is needing. You can have a mare and you want a mare halter, but she's actually just going to wear a large size halter that fits her perfectly. And another thing I see on the halters that fit correctly, I was judging a show in New Jersey, and this mare was not setting up, was absolutely being a pain in the rear. And it's such a nice mare. And I know this lady works so hard at it, and she's so good at it. And her horses are so fit and they're so well presented. And this mare was just acting terrible that day. And the halter was framing her jaw. And I was just looking at it to say why. The halter was so tight in the noseband, this mare had gotten mad. And so it, you have the adjustments on the bottom side, and they hadn't let out the adjustments on the bottom. If you can't get your finger between the horse's halter and the noseband, if you can't run a finger up there, they could get mad and not show well. You have to have it loose enough. Let that bottom side out enough that horse has room. Framing the jaw is more important than, you don't want the tightness around the nose. You just want where the placement of it is more important.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, the underside of the halter has the screws that are holding the plate on, so I can imagine.
And it's too tight. It's the leather's very firm. It doesn't have much give to it. And so you can pull that halter up really tight, and then those horses get upset. So you have to say, there has to be enough room under there where that horse, you can put your fingers up in there and that horse has room. And then also, some people like the great big buckles. They're pretty for the halter, and they're like, oh, look at that pretty buckle. And they're like, why won't my horse put his ears forward? And it's because that big buckle's jammed in his ear, in the back of his ear, and he doesn't like it. So I always prefer the smaller loop buckles.
What about chain placement? I've seen over, under, through the mouth, over the gums. I've seen chain through and just snap to the side, and I've seen it, whether it's through the mouth, over the gum, or or under the chin. It comes up the side of the halter, snaps to itself. What are your opinions on the use of that chain?
Chain placement doesn't affect me. If your horse has to be over the nose to get his attention, I understand it. I prefer it under. Lip chains are fine. Through the mouth is illegal.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
And all stock horse associations, you can have the lip chain or the lip cord.
Okay.
In Appaloosas and paints, lip chains are acceptable. In quarter horse, it has to be a lip cord or a leather covered chain. But I prefer it under. I know a lot of people who go to a lip chain and they just love to show on a lip chain. I prefer them not to have a lip chain on if possible. But if you need it to show that horse, and that's where the attention of that horse comes from, I'm totally good with it. So you can buy longer chains. There's some people that put the chain under and they don't go up the jaw with that chain. They just get into the lower, their chains aren't long enough, and you can buy a longer chain.
Okay.
In your leads.
Okay. When you see a horse coming into the pen, you've got a lot of things to consider, including the conformation with some breed and breed standards. So then how are you sorting in your mind the conformation of the horse along with the conditioning or fitness, and then the attention to detail? How does all that kind of play out in your mind?
So when you first start presenting your horse, the first thing is, you're walking your horse to the judge. The judge can see how that horse tracks coming to you. And then you're trotting around, down past the judge, and then around a cone. Understand, a lot of people believe that's just a soundness check. And for me, I actually want to see a pretty moving horse. So it's not just a soundness check, whether that horse trots sound or he's lame or he's not lame. That's, for me, a horse that is a better trotter, a better mover, that does matter to me. So knowing what speed your horse tracks the best at, and having your horse track quietly and obediently. I've seen a lot of halter people, mostly amateurs, but even some, I've seen a couple of trainers, that horse will jump around and they think that's cute, or that horse looks like, I find it completely irritating. You know, that horse should be trained and do his job and do it pleasantly and do it well. So you go through there, and then in the setup part, you know, you can't buy a world champion horse and not fit it and expect to win. You know, the fitness does matter. But the thing is it's no different. Take it into human terms. You've seen a bodybuilder that worked on their body and did everything right, and then you've seen them 10 years later and said, what happened? You know, you've seen the runner who runs constantly and they have that lean muscle, and then they quit running, they have a family, and 10 years later you said, what happened? I mean, with me, I've lost 1,000 pounds and gained 1,000 pounds. I mean, my friends never know which version of me is going to show up. You know, so it's you have.
That's so real, yes.
Yeah. But so it's the same in horses, right? Is the best version of that horse going to show up, or is a handicapped version of that horse going to show up? You know, is Clint going to show up in 32-inch jeans or 38? You know, there's a big difference, but I have all sizes. So, you know, think of the horses the same way. Are you showing that horse at the best of their ability or a compromised state?
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think a lot of amateurs believe, if I spend a lot of money on this horse, that's going to guarantee me that place, that first place. I can buy this. You can hedge your bet, but you can't buy it. The $100,000 horse can get beat by the $3,500 horse over the fitness and over the presentation. You can certainly help yourself, but you can't guarantee it. You can't. Spending a certain dollar figure is a common misconception, and that's going to get you to the top. That's a misconception.
It's good to know. I think that'll be just a valuable piece of advice for our people. So somebody who's just starting out in the amateur halter world, what are maybe some top pieces of advice would you give them?
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Okay.
The majority of trainers are helpful. They want our industry to go well. It doesn't matter how big a name they are or aren't. Most are willing to help and ask and answer questions. I don't know of many that won't say, you know, spend some time with you and give you some pointers and words of advice. I've never been able to teach myself out of a job yet. Most of the people that I have helped in the beginning for free became long-term clients. I'll tell a story real quick. I have good friends, Ron and Debbie Neer. I had met them. And anyway, Debbie comes up to me at a horse show and she said, can you show me how to band a mare? She said, I've been trying to do it and I just can't do it right. And I said, I would be happy to bring her over in the morning. And she's like, in the morning, we won't have time. And I'm like, I'll have time, bring her over in the morning. So she brings her over in the morning. I said, it would just be easier for me to band her for you and you to watch. And she goes, okay. So I banded the mare for her. And she goes, what do I owe you? And I said, nothing. Well, you know, 30 years later, they still have horses with me. And they said that was the most expensive banding job they've ever had. And I never charged them for it. But the thing is they're excited about the industry to this day.
Yep.
But there are so many people out there that are just helpful. I don't know anybody in our industry that wouldn't help you out if you're just willing to ask the questions. And there's no such thing as a bad question. Why does your horse act that way? Can you look at my horse? Do you like the halter? Do you think the halters fit on him well? Would you get rid of this halter and get a different halter? You know, just evaluate for me what's happening here, and do you think I'm on the right track, or what could I change? Most professionals will help you.
Mhm.
and gladly so.
Yeah.
They're thrilled that you're there. Never be intimidated uh, by the professional class there because they're happy you're there.
Yeah. Agreed. As an amateur, I would say the same. I can't answer a lot of people's questions, but I am certainly happy that people are there. And whatever help I can offer at whatever level that might be. Yeah, I have found it to be a welcoming environment, but also a place where people aren't necessarily stingy with their
Right,
knowledge or expertise.
right. I've even had exhibitors. I had one, well, two actually, who's called me after a horse show and said, "You don't know me, but if you'll remember, I showed this bay gilding and this." And she get, "What could I do better?"
Mm,
I'm happy to give that advice.
yeah, it's great. I think it's one of the reasons that our industry is pretty fantastic.
Yes,
We might be small, but we are mighty
for
and
sure.
well invested in one another. So, how do you see the future of our industry evolving?
I think it's evolving well. Uh,
Okay.
I would like to see. I think our top events are doing well. Your Breeders' Hall to Futurity, your World shows, you always want more participation, but those top events are doing well. I think we
Okay.
need to make sure we try to keep that middle set of horses involved and work on ways to keep those horses involved. You're going to have so many colts a year for those futurities, and only so many of them are going to be a national world level horse. So how do we say this horse still has value in the halter world? And I think we're going to have to look at ways, just like the thoroughbred industry looked at ways. They have claiming races, they have allowance races, they have stakes races. So they have their big events, but they did not leave the middle or the lower level horse behind because they put that claiming race and those allowance races in there. I think we've got to do that. We're working on systems, and I think we're putting in some big efforts to make the limited division
Mm-hmm.
a thing. So somebody could say, well, I haven't shown very long. I can be in the limited, so I can be in this class, and I'm going to be able to uh, be in the limited part of it. And that's going to put me with my own peers, and I could win in that. But in the limited division, you can still show a 5-time world champion halter mare because it's you who are limited. I think
Mm-hmm.
we need to make sure there's a limited horse division, not just a limited exhibitor division. So, and how we create that, I don't know necessarily. So let's just use WCHA Futurity, for example, the
Mm-hmm.
Ultra Million. Say, we're going to have a class that pays out $30,000. You know, if you want to enter this class and you've paid up and everything else, and you've entered the mare and the stud, just like we normally do,
Mm-hmm.
you can go in this futurity for a $30,000 purse. First place is going to be pay 10,000, but anybody on the rail can buy a colt out of there for 7,500. So am I going to be willing to put a colt that I think's worth 50,000 in there to try for 10,000? I don't think I will, because he might win it, but I'll lose him. Just like the claiming races, you take a risk in the thoroughbred industry putting a horse in a claiming race.
Mm-hmm.
What that does is keep that level of horse consistent and competing against his type, his kind, his level. So
Mm-hmm.
if we put some big money in some futurity classes, but put a buyout system on those colts, and maybe go down as much as 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Amy's going to show her colt and she
Mm-hmm.
loves it. She thinks it's worth 30,000, but she wants to try for that. But I can buy it for 5,000. I think we could protect a middle market horse and create some value there. People aren't going to put their best ones in there to lose it. It's a system we'll have to work on, but
Sure.
I think the limited system of exhibitor is great. We need to develop a limited system of horse.
Okay.
And on the performance industry side of it, we do a limited horse that, that's a green horse that's not in the trail, that hasn't been shown in the trail. And so he's not as experienced in the trail. I get that. But in halter, that's not going to work for us. They want to try the maiden classes, the horses that haven't been shown.
Mm-hmm.
I might have $100,000 horse in the stall that hasn't been shown.
Mm-hmm.
We need to limit it down to where it's the limited horse, where that horse that's that middle market value horse or
Mm-hmm.
lower. How do we create value?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can create the value there by just mimicking the thoroughbred industry on the claiming
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it.
Is there, do you see that happening at the large show level and like the state club level?
Yes, I would like to see it everywhere.
Okay.
Uh, I would like to see it everywhere. Um, and we've tried the claiming futurities a couple of times. There was a paint horse show years ago that had a claiming futurity, and they're like, well, you could put your horse in here, and I still remember I won it with a yearling filly, and she didn't get claimed. And we wanted to sell her, and so she won, and I think the claiming price was 15,000 or something, but she didn't get claimed. But I think I won $800. Well, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, those horses have to be up that middle market. That if we put that claim in there of $7,500
Mm-hmm.
for these babies, any baby can be bought for 7,500. We need to create a system where people aren't trying to sell them for 7,500, or the price, the pot is big enough, they're willing to go in there.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't get their colt sold, it doesn't matter. They won 7,500. They won 5,000. They're willing to haul, they're willing to go, and they're willing to chase that dollar figure. And if the colt sells, oh, well, great. Or dang it, I lost my colt.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be a claiming. How we've done it before in the past is the claiming was, these are the horses I don't want. I need rid of them. We need to create a level of money involved in those horses and that middle market horse that we go there and we might lose them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think too, there's not only an art and science to the horse show side of it and creating different markets and streams of revenue, not only for the associations, but for the humans. There's also the art and science of motivating people. What will motivate people to come to a horse show? Is it, like you mentioned, the bigger purse or the possibility of selling their horse or the buckle or the trophy or the medallion? Like there is so much to it.
Yeah. And, in our industry as well, on a national level, you'll have horses that dominate, and rightfully so. They are the very best horses. But I like the Arabian industry. Uh, they'll have the national champion mare or the
Mm-hmm.
national champion stallion and gelding. So that's the highest you can attain. So like that, so that when that mare becomes national champion mare, she can't come back for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now she can go over to the amateur side. She can go to the youth side. They can saddle her up and ride her. They can do whatever they want, but she can't come back for 2 years. Where, and I, I don't want a lot of hate mail on this because I'm not saying we should do that, but the thing is we have a system where a dominant horse can come in and win for 6, 7 years. And people are like, why would I participate? Why would I buy an aged mare or an aged gelding when we can't do that? So not saying that we need to put those same limitations in to protect that industry of keeping horses selling and moving and people interested, but maybe the claiming side of it and the limited side of it, we can develop a program that works.
Mm-hmm.
Get some ideas on how that happens.
Yeah. The activity in the show ring is displayed on social media. We know what's happening across the country. And you know, or it might be easy to assume who is going to win a certain class based on who's showing up. Yeah, there's definitely a feeling of that.
And I've had it several years ago. I had a really dominant age mare that we showed, and she won the world championships many times. She was a quarter in a paint. And when the class sizes were small, she was a dominant mare. When that mare passed away, age mare started selling again. 4 mares sold right away. The class sizes grew because it was open again.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to show her. She was a great mare. We wanted to show her, but how do we keep showing her, but protect the industry at the same time? Those are questions that are still out there that I don't necessarily have the answer to, but those are things we need to address.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. What is one last piece of advice you have for us?
Consistency is everything. Doing a little every day beats doing a lot one time.
Mm.
Do something every day with those horses. But that also applies in life, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It kind of leans into that. What size Clint or Amy's going to show up? Why is it so easy to apply that to the activities that we have in the barn versus ourselves? I don't know.
I'm telling you, I'm striving for that answer still today. But I will tell you this: I'm 58 years old. I turned 58 in December, and I haven't given up yet. So there's the good side.
Amen.
You know,
Awesome.
I convinced myself, I've done enough. I should be able to let go, and I should be able to do this. And the answer is no, you shouldn't. But the thing is I would have to remind myself of that all the time. But with my horses, it's never a question. There's no such thing as a day they stand in a stall.
That's right.
And I don't, it's me that I got to work on, not the horses. But then there's some people that they got to learn to work on the horses.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I was raised, my dad was a horse trainer. I was born into it. So I got to live this life of no job and train horses. My dad worked at a company for 15 years and trained horses at night. So, I see the people who say, well, but I have a job, I don't have time. Or then I see that, and he worked horses at night to run a business. I mean, he was like, hey, 4 hours of sleep is all I'm going to get, but this is my dream. This is what I want to do. When I first started out, I rented a barn, had no insulation in it. I showed at the stock shows during the winter time, and it had no indoor arena. I busted ice out of the buckets. The barn was so cold. I had 2 blankets and a sheet on those horses in the barn. I never unblanketed. I would just pick up a side and rubber brush and vacuum under it. I had no indoor arena. It was so muddy that I had a long driveway, and I jogged them up and down the driveway. If you want it bad enough, you'll make it happen.
Yeah.
But again, people who win, people who are successful, they never assign blame. They accept responsibility.
Good stuff. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your continued investment in us, not
Enjoy
only
it.
in the pen, but here on the podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.